The TS-54 is one of the absolute best Tier 8 tanks in the game, and I'm going to show why. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the TS-54 tank review. My name's Led, and I'm going to go over a tank that really has gone under the radar, something that I haven't focused on very much, but I picked up recently, and it has been phenomenal. This has, I think, undoubtedly my best Tier 8 results in any tank whatsoever. Taking a look, this is my replay, and it's going to be the best game I had in about a 15 or so game session. I've played this tank about 20-30 times, and I've won, I think, 89-88% of those games. In fact, I went on about roughly an, I think, 15-18 game win streak, and it was just absolutely rolling over people. Before I go over the stats, you'll see that I'm in a bit of a precarious situation. I've got an E75 on my flank. I am the low tier in this matchup, and you're going to see just how brutal this tank can be, even to upper tier tanks. And the reason for this is because the stats are just so phenomenally good. Up here on screen right now, you see that I'm going to compare the TS-54 against some of its counterparts. I've picked the 703-2, which is the Tier 8 premium version of the double barrel tank. I'm also comparing to the tech tree equivalent, the IS-22, which is just nowhere close in the realm of what this tank is capable of. And I'm also going to pick the Skoda T56 because I think the Skoda T56 is arguably the best Tier 8 heavy tank in the game. You could argue for the BZ-176. That thing is a little bit more jank. It's better in some scenarios, but if you want a true all-rounder, then the Skoda is just phenomenal. With that said, the first thing that stands out immediately is just the DPM of the TS-54. It's got 2300 plus base. Compare that to a 703-2, which has sub 2000. Compare that to a Skoda T56 that has about 2000. And you can see that this 336 advantage is really significant. You really feel like you're shooting very quickly, and it feels more like a medium tank in that regard. And because of that incredible damage per minute, I ripped that E75 to shreds. That is 1600 damage to a tier 9 tank, and I didn't take any in return. One of the notable downsides about the TS-54 is that its penetration really is poor all around. It's got poor pen on its regular shells, and it definitively has poor penetration on its premium shells, so that makes penetrating things like an E75 very difficult. Also, I'm going to make a pretty key mistake right here. I did not expect to have a Conway and a Skoda flanking from that shot. I was quite surprised, and so I lose almost all of my health just here in the first 3 minutes of the game. And so now, just with 439 damage, we'll see 439 health, we'll see how much I'm capable of achieving. This penetration is considerably lower than you would expect on other tanks, especially a tier 8 tank destroyer has much better pen, and I think it's one of the key weaknesses of this tank. The damage is also notably the lowest in this category. It only hits for 280, which really doesn't feel great, but if you get a double shot, like I put in right there, then it really adds up quickly. That is 596. If you're doubling, then you're going to be able to penetrate and hit for, on average, 560 damage. That's the equivalent of getting slapped by a Jagdtiger. It's more than you would do in an SU-130 PM, and if you can do multiple doubles like this, the damage really does rack up extraordinarily quickly. So, while its double potential is not the greatest, it's very flexible, and comboed with the damage per minute, you're able to do a lot very quickly. Still, it is weaker in this regard than the Skoda T56 that's going to be able to do 920 in 3.5 seconds. It's weaker than the 703-2, which is able to do that 780 penetration, or 780 alpha damage hit. And so this is, I'd say, the big two downsides. The penetration's weak, and the alpha damage is not as strong as you would like. With that said, though, if you take a look at the aiming time, the gun stats really do feel good. You're able to shoot with some accuracy. It's got 0.36 dispersion, which is much better than something like the 703-2 or the Skoda. It allows you to hit these shots with some reliability. The aim time, the soft stats really do feel good. You'll see it's not quite as good as the 703. That tank just has fantastic soft stats overall, but it is better than the IS-22, and it's much better than the Skoda T56. And it makes the gun feel very comfortable. It almost feels feels more like a medium tank gun than a proper heavy tank gun, and that is a great thing about it. It's the tank has 8 degrees of gun depression. That's the best in this regard. Joint. Bit of a poor shell right there on the T-30. This minus 8 degrees gun depression really does allow you to work a ridgeline fairly well. It's not quite at Swedish heavy tank levels. It's not minus 10 or minus 12, but minus 8 will serve you really well in a bunch of scenarios, and it's way better than a 703-2. I think that's what makes this tank just more enjoyable to play, is that gun depression allows you to play in so many different scenarios. Its mobility is pretty good. I run a turbo on mine just about all the time. You get 40 kilometers per hour base in this thing, and it really allows it to move around at a good pace. It's not the fastest, but you'll see that I was able to get in position here pretty quickly. I'm chasing down some of that last bit of damage, and so having this mobility does allow me to get in position, and I get a chance at really a couple shells that I could have put in. There's one, and we'll see if I get one into the Nomad. The reverse speed is minus 15. That's better than an IS-22, but pretty average, I'd say, overall. The terrain resistance is notably the weakest in this entire category, but I don't think it makes too much of a difference overall. The armor, very decent. Whole armor, 100 millimeters. You can reliably bounce a bunch of things off of that, and the turret is just phenomenal. In fact, with the end of this game, let's take a quick look at the armor model. Taking a look at the armor model, the TS-54, you can see really does live up to the hype on that turret. It really is phenomenal. You get a tiny weak point right here on the top, but I almost never see anybody shooting here. One place you can get penetrated is right here behind the ears. You can't really see it because of this. It looks like a bit of a spaced armor or something over it, but you can get penetrated right here in these ears. I don't think many people know this because the tank's a little uncommon, but it really is effective to shoot right here, and you'll get penetrated there quite often. If you manage to angle the armor just a little bit, you will have a pretty decent hold down monster, especially if you're using some of your gun depression. If you aim that gun down, you're going to have just an impenetrable upper plate. You get a tiny weak spot, but I haven't seen anybody shoot that whatsoever. And so long as you hide that lower plate, you will be in fantastic shape. This really is a phenomenal hold down beast. It is notable if people load the gold, or if you face something that has some full-blooded tier 10 penetration, then they're going to rip through your hull. But that turret just stays just absolutely phenomenal almost all the time, and you can even look off some of your opponents and still keep most of your armor intact. Taking a look at just the last few stats, it's got 1500 HP, absolutely dead standard for a tier 8 heavy tank, and it's got horrendous camo. You don't want to be moving around in this heavy tank. You don't have any camo really to work with, and the fire chance is 10%. View range, very good, much better than all the other tanks in this regard, way better than the Soviet counterparts, and even better than the Skoda T-56, which means if you slap vents on this, and I think vents is an absolute must, then you'll be able to get very close to that spawning cap and be able to deal with your opponents quite handily. This tank's got a lot of great all-around stats. It's not phenomenal at anything, but as you saw in the last game, it can do a lot in just a bunch of different scenarios. And now that we've taken a look at my best game in the TS-54, let's see what the community has been able to do. This is Cry Me a River, and he's going to be playing just one of the best games I've seen yet in this tank. Noticeably, Cry Me a River loves this tank. He's got the 3 marks on both barrels, which always looks phenomenal to see, and he is rushing into position on Himmelsdorf. When you've got a tank that's just this strong, this well armored, you're able to do a ton. And right away he puts in the double. One thing I didn't discuss in the stats, and is really the key part to this tank, is the double is really almost mandatory in this tank. The way the reload works is you can shoot every, give or take, 5.86 seconds if you shoot one by one on reload. And really the huge difficulty with this tank is that if you just wait on your entry clip, it only takes another about 1 second to load in to fully reload the shell. So despite the fact you're an auto reloader, in a sense, it's much better just to wait until you've got both shells and then double them. You will improve your DPM if you spam the double fire as often as you can. If you want to think about it this way, if you load in both shells at once, you can do 560 damage, and then in another about 7 seconds you'll put out your third shell, and that's going to be 840 damage in the span of about 7 seconds. That is phenomenal. However, if you just decide to shoot one by one, you're going to be doing that in about 10 seconds or a little longer, and so that makes it much weaker. Also, shout out to Crimea River, because he's doing this with almost completely standard rounds and standard consumable. He's been shooting nothing but AP this entire time. He's got basic consumables, and the only premium consumable that he's actually running is his premium fire extinguisher, which hardly even counts based on how many Wargaming just gives you for free. And so for you free-to-play players, you might like the replay, although you will not be able to access this tank, because one thing I haven't mentioned is acquiring this thing. If you want to play the TS-54, you have to buy it. You have to buy a Wot Plus subscription, and that costs about $9 a month, which is definitely pricey. And perhaps I'll talk more about that in the future towards the end of the video. But you don't want to be buying $9 a month just for access to this tank. It's a good tank. It's a ton of fun to play, but it is not worth that much money. Notice how Crimea River breaks his reload multiple times throughout this replay, and I think that absolutely is the best thing that you can do. Because it only takes about 0.8 seconds longer, you don't want to screw around and lose potential shots because you're waiting on the reload. Your reload is so fast in this tank that it's definitely worth firing as often as you can. And if you lose out on a shell, it was going to take 5 seconds of the entry clip to reload anyway. Moreover, this damage, really, you got to output it. If you're waiting around trying to min-max every single shell, you might end up missing a lot of opportunities, and you don't want to do that. It's much better to guarantee a shell for 280 damage than to potentially save yourself 0.8 seconds on a round that might come into play later. Guaranteed value is just incredibly powerful over potential, and so with this tank in particular, it's got a really short reload. You just want to shoot on reload whenever you've got the opportunity to. The long entry clip just makes loading in both shells at once not all that viable unless you're going to double in a scenario. I find what works best for me is as you're moving around the map, you want to start an engagement, you want to pop in a double, and then just shoot one by one as you keep going along. Now, Crimea River already up to 5.3 thousand damage. Phenomenal round by him. And notably, he only has 3 AP shells left. He's been shooting nothing but AP this entire time. Unfortunately, low rolls the Caro P88, so he's going to need a high roll here. He's going to load in the double, seek for an opportunity, and he does manage to high roll, killing that tier 7 enemy heavy tank. Fantastic play by Crimea River. As a reminder, it was going, if he fired one shot, it would have taken him another 5 seconds to reload the second shell, and by that time, the enemy would have gotten behind cover at that point. So by waiting on the double, he allows himself to get in a shot very quickly. Now, Crimea River's team is down by 1 tank. It's 3 versus 4. He manages to bounce a shell from the Juto because this TS-54 is just so well armored, and now he's going to pressure this T-34-85M. He puts in a good shell on the move. You can see just how powerful this tank can be with its fantastic gun handling, and he finishes off the T-34-85, although one thing he's going to do that I'm not quite a fan of is he's not repairing his fuel tanks. I suppose he's got the fire extinguisher, so that does help out in the end, but still, you don't want to get set on fire for that tick of damage, and much better to repair it in this scenario, in my opinion. Now he's going to pressure the Juto. He should have doubled there. If he would have doubled this, he would have been able to reload one more shell. Instead, he also fires early right there. A double shot would have allowed him to kill this Juto already. The Juto misses his extra shell, but Crimea River does put himself in a poor scenario. If he had waited to double that tank at the get-go, that Juto probably would not have gotten the second shot out regardless. Now, in a 2 versus 2, Crimea River is charging in against the Tiger P and the VK3002M. His IS is on a pretty good glut of hit points. However, he takes a shot, and very soon you're going to see that, yes, that VK is flanking around. Now, Crimea River charging in. Hopefully his IS can put in a shell, because one thing I didn't mention is how poor the ammo capacity of the TS-54 is. He only has 6 shells remaining. He's got to do 1,000 damage. It's going to take 2 shells to kill this VK. It's going to take 2 shells to kill that Tiger P. And these HE rounds are very weak. They are not very strong overall. Still, Crimea River charging into position. He's got enough ammo to... Well, he had enough ammo to finish off this game. Now he's going to need to penetrate 2 shells into the Tiger P. And he's going to have to somehow penetrate a shell into either the VK or into the Tiger P with HE. And if he doesn't, we may be looking at a hard break. Ooh, bit of a risky shell in there, but still connects into the Tiger P. And if he just aims carefully, he'll finish off the Tiger. And now, with only 2 HE rounds, Crimea River puts in the chat 2 HE, and he's charging into position. This VK is behind him. Normally this would be an easy fight, but considering that he's got to penetrate an HE shell, he's got to hope this VK does something stupid. The VK pokes out, gives him his side, and the VK's completely unangled. And he penetrates this HE shell. This HE shell only has 47 millimeters of HE. And with a single round left in his tank, Crimea River finishes with 8.5 thousand damage. It's almost 6,000 damage blocked. And the victory. Let's take a look at the post-game results. This is my game on Morvenka. I end up with 5.8 thousand damage, 1,100 spotting or assistance, and the mastery badge. And one of my best results, I think, of the year. That's 1,939 base experience. I shot 27 times. I penetrated 23, so some pretty decent marksmanship. I do regret a missed double shell on the T30. That really could have pushed me over that 6K hedge. End up gaining some credits. I'm using, I believe, a clan booster or something to that regard, and so end up with a tidy profit despite firing a ton of APCR because I don't want to deal with bouncing my shells. You'll notice that I didn't end up blocking very much damage in this round, but still, the TS-54, excellent gun handling, excellent. The ability to pop in a 560 alpha damage clap is amazing, and it allows this tank to both operate as a high damage per shot tank when it needs to, and it allows it when you're off of that to just DPM down some opponents in a way that a 703 can't, in a way that a Skoda T56 can't because it's on reload. This thing, it can hit hard and then it can keep peppering you down on and on and on as it goes along, and it's just such a powerful tank. Let's also take a look at Crimea River's result. He had by far the better game. He has a steel wall top gun. He gets the high caliber and the Radley Walters medal. That's 8 kills. He ends up with 8,564 damage and 2,404 base experience. Absolutely busted result. Complete carry by him. And since he is firing a ton of APCR and seems to have had several kinds of boosters going on, he ends up with 324,000 credits profit. He fired 39 of the 40 shells. He penetrated 34 with some excellent marksmanship. I loved how he was fighting in the town, side scraping, pushing around, doubling his opponents when he was able to. And notice how he just kept firing on and on and on. You don't have to wait to get bow shells into the tank because of the long interclip reload. Instead, just fire whenever you've got that opportunity. Don't waste potential damage. Just take what you can in the moment. One final note needs to be made. This TS-54, super powerful. I'm going to have, I think, a tier list coming out of a variety of different tiers upcoming. If I had to slot the TS-54 into a ranking, I would put it as such. The gun feels really good. It's not the best gun on a tier 8 heavy tank. I would think something like the BZ-176 has a stronger gun. It's got 800 alpha. Something like the Skoda T56 or the 703-2, I think you could argue has a better gun. But what this tank does have is it's got just, I think, better mobility than those tanks, and it's got the gun repression and phenomenal armor. So we'll say the gun is at a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good. It's really flexible. I really enjoy it. The armor is 9 out of 10. It's really strong. The ability to go hull down all the time and use that gun repression just allows you to bounce a ton of shells. It feels like an apocalypse tank, and whereas something like a 703-2 also has phenomenal armor, the 703 is limited by its 5 degrees of gun repression. That makes it so uncomfortable to play, versus the TS-54, it's able to do a ton of things the 703 can, and then it can go hull down all over the map. It makes it really powerful. The mobility, it's at a solid 6 out of 10. It's not amazing, but it gets the job done. And when you think about this tank having really no downsides, it doesn't do anything poorly. It's got alpha damage with its double. It's got DPM on its gun. It's got good mobility. It's got fantastic armor. I really think this becomes one of the best and most enjoyable tanks in the game. To get it, you've got to buy Wot Plus. And Wot Plus is not worth it if you don't play the game a lot. If you just play an hour or so after school, after work, you don't want to buy Wot Plus. If you're playing a lot, however, then what you can do is you can get gold. So you're able to log up 500 gold per week if you play the game a lot. And that means you're making 2,000 gold per month. And multiply by that by 24 months, that means you're getting about roughly 24 to could be 25,000 gold per year. And when you think about 25,000 gold and what you're paying to do that, because Wot Plus costs $9, so you're paying $108 per year to unlock Wot Plus, you can basically think of it as paying $100, $108 per year to get 25,000 gold. And 25,000 gold costs about $100 regardless. So if you play a lot, then Wot Plus gives you a bunch of different benefits. It allows you to unlock the TS-54, and it's a really, really fun and powerful tank. If you're getting the gold, that's basically what you wanted in the first place. You also have a few different abilities. You can demount equipment for absolute free. You don't have to worry about demounting kits. You are able to AFK farm XP on some crew members. And one thing that I wasn't aware of until I just bought it very recently is that if you just log in daily, you get a set of bonuses, and every 5 days you get, if you will, a medium-sized bonus. So you can get 20,000 free experience. Today was my fifth day in a row logging in, and I got 5,000 free experience. There are different things you can get, times 5 missions. You can get different things all around. And so Wot Plus is a pretty decent investment if you play a bunch. If you don't play enough to justify the purchase, then don't do it. If you're asking whether the TS-54 is worth $108 a year, it is not. You would be much better served just to buy the 703 too, or to buy the Skoda T56. But if you want to make some gold and you want to purchase a whole heap of gold so that when you're playing, you're able to participate in assembly shops, you're able to get more free experience, you're able to do a wide variety of things, then I think Wot Plus is probably worth it. I've bought it for the first time in my World of Tanks career, and I've quite enjoyed it. I think it was worth the investment. And you get this gem, absolute gem of a tank. And just to highlight just how powerful I think this tank is, this is every game I've played in the tank so far. I'm using standard equipment only. I haven't used improved equipment. I haven't stuck bond equipment on anything. So I'm just using basic equipment. And my results in this tank have been phenomenal. 2,841 average damage per game. That's very good. I'm getting 567 assistance damage every time, and I'm killing on average 2.15 tanks per game. So really, really powerful results. And the biggest thing, look at the victories right here. This is 85% wins after 26 games. Now, 26 games is not a huge sample size, but I was winning over and over and over again. And to continue driving the point home, you can see This is my session from today. I played 13 games in the TS-54 at this point. I got 13 victories, 13 game winning streak. I believe I won my last several from the night before, so that's about an 18 game winning streak. Of course I got lucky. Of course you cannot expect results anywhere close to that. But what I do want to point out is that this tank gave me the tools to be useful in every game I played. Tier 10 matchups, I ended up winning. Tier 8 matchups, I ended up winning. I clobbered Tier 6s. I was useful against Tier 9s. This thing was so incredibly powerful because it's a well-rounder, and because it just is able to do anything you want in so many different scenarios. You can win. You can carry so many games in this thing. So, TS-54, final conclusion. I'm going to say it's a 9 out of 10. It's one of the best tanks. I would, if I were making a tier list, and I will soon, I would consider putting this in S tier because it's so powerful. I think it's better than the 7032. I think it's on par with something like a Skoda T56, and you absolutely want one in your garage if you've got the cash to spend. With that said, thank you so much for joining me on this longer video. If you really enjoyed it, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We are growing up to 1,000 subs. And if you are interested, at 1,000 subs, I will be giving away a free Tier 8 Premium tank to one lucky subscriber. All you have to do is be subscribed, comment down below, and one of you is going to have a phenomenal day. Hopefully one just as good as I had here. With that said, I'm Lad, and I'm out.